The name Goliath is known across the world, a giant of war, a Philistine champion, a man of arrogance and defiance. He mocked the armies of the living God, and in his pride, he sealed his own downfall. But Goliath was not an isolated terror. The Bible reveals that he was part of a greater evil, a lineage of giants who stood against God's chosen people. His brothers and his kind were just as fierce, just as proud, and just as doomed. This is their story, according to Scripture alone. Long after Goliath fell by the hand of David, war continued between Israel and the Philistines. In 2 Samuel 21, Scripture records that once again, the enemies of Israel gathered their strength, and among them rose more giants, descendants of the same wicked bloodline. The first to challenge Israel was Ishbi-Benob. 2 Samuel 21:16 describes him as a descendant of the giants. His spear weighed 300 shekels of bronze, nearly 8 pounds. He was armed with new weapons, fresh for battle, and he had one goal in mind: to kill King David. But before he could fulfill his wicked ambition, he was struck down. Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, David's loyal nephew, came to David's aid and killed Ishbi-Benob. Pride and strength could not save the giant from the swift justice of God's hand. Yet the Philistines were not finished. Another enemy rose against Israel, Saph, also called Sippai in 1 Chronicles 20:4. He, too, was of the race of giants, another defiant warrior who chose to oppose God's people. But like Ishbi-Benob, he fell. Sibbecai the Hushathite, a faithful servant of David, killed Saph in battle. The strength of man could not stand against the will of God. Still, the enemy persisted. A third warrior appeared, armed like the giants before him. 2 Samuel 21:19 tells us that Elhanan, the son of Jaar-oregim, struck down Goliath the Gittite, whose spear was like a weaver's beam. But 1 Chronicles 25 reveals the full truth. It was not Goliath who had already died, but his brother Lami. Lami, like his brother, was proud. Like Goliath, he trusted in his weapons, his size, his strength, but none of these could deliver him from death. Elhanan brought him down, just as David had brought down Goliath years before. Finally, a fourth giant challenged Israel. He is unnamed in Scripture, but his deformity was unforgettable. 2 Samuel 21:20 describes him as having 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. He too was a descendant of the giants, another enemy who dared to defy Israel. But he met the same fate as the others. Jonathan, the son of Shimei and nephew of David, killed him in battle. The Bible summarizes these events in 2 Samuel 21:22. These 4 were descended from the giants in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. Their strength failed them. Their pride destroyed them. Their defiance ended in death. The Scripture calls them descendants of Rapha. The name is connected to the ancient Rephaim, a people long remembered for their size, their strength, and their hostility toward God's purposes. Goliath and his brothers came from Gath, a city known for harboring these remnants of the giants. Their wickedness was not new. It was rooted deep in the dark history of the land. Long before David, during the days of Moses, the people of Israel had heard terrifying reports of giants. When Moses sent spies into Canaan, the spies brought back fearful words. Numbers 13:33 says, "There we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim, and we seem to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seem to them. The Anakim were giants, descendants of the Nephilim, and their presence struck terror into the hearts of Israel. But God had already promised the land to his people, and their size was no match for his power. Moses later reminded Israel in Deuteronomy chapter 2, "A people great and tall, the sons of the Anakim, whom you know, and of whom you have heard it said, who can stand before the sons of Anak?" Joshua, the servant of Moses, led Israel to victory over many of these giants. Joshua 11:22 says, "There was none of the Anakim left in the land of the people of Israel. Only in Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod did some remain." The giants were pushed back, but not completely destroyed. In these few strongholds, they survived. And from Gath, Goliath and his wicked brothers would rise generations later. The Bible gives other names for these ancient enemies. The Rephaim appear in the days of Abraham as a people of great size. Og, king of Bashan, was one of the last of the Rephaim. Deuteronomy 3:11 says, "His bed was made of iron, 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide, over 13 feet long and 6 feet wide." Yet even this giant king fell before the armies of the living God. The giants of Gath, Goliath, Lami, Saph, Ishbi-Benob, and the six-fingered man were heirs to this cursed legacy. They carried the pride, the violence, and the defiance of the Nephilim and the Anakim, but they could not escape the judgment of God. Goliath, the loudest mocker of all, was slain by a shepherd boy with a sling. His brothers, fierce and terrible, were defeated by the loyal men of David. They trusted in their size. They trusted in their weapons. They trusted in their strength, but they did not trust in the Lord, and so they fell. The Bible does not honor them. It remembers them as enemies, proud, wicked, and defeated. Goliath was not a hero. He was a blasphemer, a man who cursed the armies of God and was shattered by the very hand he mocked. His brothers stood tall. Their weapons were mighty. Their words were proud. But like Goliath, they fell one by one before the power of the living God. And their memory stands today as a warning. No weapon, no strength, no pride can stand against the Lord.